Hello everyone, I'm Daniel Schröter from the Technical University of Darmstadt. Today I will present our paper, Fast Harmonic Tetrahedral Mesh Optimization. Let me first explain why tetrahedral meshes are useful. Tetrahedral meshes can be used for numerically solving PDEs, so we can simulate physical phenomena such as heat flux or deformations. Let's just take a look at the chess bishop on the right-hand side. The chess bishop has a boundary, which we can discretize with triangles, and the chess bishop also has a volume, which we just fill with tetrahedra. These tetrahedra then sum up to a volumetric representation. We can use this volumetric representation to simulate a deformation. We can just fix the chess bishop at the bottom and apply a force to the top of the chess bishop, so we can have a deformation. We can also simulate surface stress. In general terms, the more tetrahedra we use, the more accurate is the deformation. These tetrahedral meshes are frequently generated by using Delaunay type meshing. Still for today, it is an open issue that Delaunay-based methods introduce ill-shaped elements. These ill-shaped elements can really cause the simulation to fail, so we need to avoid them. There are many ways in which an element can go wrong. In general terms, we either have a very small edge or almost no volume as a splinter, which is just flat as paper. So after mesh generation, we apply an optimization step to improve element shape. In general, there are two types of operations to improve element shape. The first is vertex relocation, where we leave the connectivity as it is, but we shift vertex positions such that element shape improves. The other is remeshing, where we only change the connectivity of the mesh to obtain better elements. Sequential optimization, especially of large meshes, can impose long runtimes of many seconds or even minutes, and this is especially an issue for many Delaunay-based methods, which preserve the Delaunay criterion. We have devised a method that optimizes the chess bishop, which we have seen just before, in below 400 milliseconds, which provides means for interactive optimization. We build upon the notion of harmonic triangulations, which are somewhat related to Delaunay triangulations. In harmonic triangulations, the aim is to minimize Dirichlet energy. We have a continuous formulation of Dirichlet energy over a continuous domain omega. Of course, in the triangular world, we need the discretization of Dirichlet energy, which leads to a Laplacian of a simplex tau. So in harmonic triangulations, we want to minimize the Laplacian. In more precise terms, we want to minimize the trace of the Laplacian. We can implement harmonic flips, which minimize the sum of traces. Let me just show you in a video how they are related to the Delaunay flip. Let's see the yellow marked triangle. The circumcircle of the yellow marked triangle contains the red mesh vertex. Thus, the Delaunay criterion is violated. Now we can also calculate the sum of traces of the two yellow triangles and perform a flip. After the flip, the Delaunay criterion is satisfied and we find the lower sum of traces. Thus, this harmonic flip also is a Delaunay flip. In the second dimension, each harmonic flip is a Delaunay flip. In the third dimension, they either coincide or they create fewer tetrahedra, and this is useful for simulations as each element goes computationally. Another important property of harmonic triangulations is that harmonic optimization significantly outperforms many Delaunay-based methods. We take a quick look at previous work. Mesh optimization has been addressed by academics for decades. Early methods just relocated vertex positions to the average of their vicinity, but you gotta be cautious because you may introduce element inversions. So more robust approaches came up, which optimize element quality functions that typically rely on the Jacobian of an element. Today, many optimization methods use the Jacobian to map from a distorted element to an ideal element, and the ideal element most of the time is an equilateral element. Since mesh optimization can be time costly, many approaches have been devised to parallelize mesh optimization. These typically use multi-threading or distributed systems, while fine-grained parallelism, such as GPUs, has not been that much explored. Also, the treatment of boundary vertices is an open issue. Many approaches just subdivide boundary elements and check if quality has improved. This involves backtracking and is time consuming. Many approaches also reproject vertices onto the boundary, which is also time consuming because you have to find the closest boundary triangle. And many approaches also just restrict relocation with a geometric error term, which requires to compare element quality improvement to a geometric distance, which is arguably an apples to oranges comparison. I will now explain how our method of harmonic mesh optimization works. We relocate vertices individually in parallel on the GPU. During each gradient descent step, adjacent vertices are fixed to achieve individual optimization. Our vertex relocation scheme is visualized by the two figures showing two example gradient descent steps with the fields of the to-be-optimized trace. For each vertex, we find the minimal step size for an inversion and reduce it until we are sure that no inversion occurs. Within the resulting interval, we find an optimal position for the vertex. As optimization of interior vertices is not sufficient, we also address relocation of boundary vertices. In our paper, we explore the use of directional derivatives to find a minimum on a tangent subspace. We can either achieve full preservation of the input boundary, or we can approximately preserve the input boundary for even better mesh quality. For full preservation of the input boundary, we only relocate vertices along coplanar faces or collinear edges, as relocating vertices on corners or curves would alter the input mesh surface. For approximate preservation of the input boundary, we relocate vertices along the input boundary. This includes maintaining the state of a vertex. Initially, each vertex is on a vertex of the input boundary. We can then relocate the vertex along edges or along triangles until termination. We also present a massively parallel algorithm for flipping. The key challenge is that parallel flipping can produce invalid triangulations, so we need some kind of conflict prevention. We exploit that, prioritizing flips by the reduction of the trace leads to good results. So each thread evaluates the local benefit of a flip and compares that to the flips in the local vicinity. We then only perform locally most beneficial flips to prevent conflicts. We compare massively parallel flipping to sequential flipping. Both algorithms prioritize flips by their reduction of the trace. Besides runtime, our evaluation also covers the resulting TED counts because we want to investigate if postponing non-locally most beneficial flips leads to different results. We find significant speedups for our parallelized algorithm. In fact, the speedups are from 106 times to 318 times, which is a compelling result. We also find equivalent TED counts, which means we have achieved some kind of neat parallelization. We combine vertex relocation with flipping, performing several alternating paths until convergence. We compare convergence of our algorithm, red, to the original harmonic mesh optimization algorithm, blue. A key difference to the original method is that our method performs individual gradient descent steps, while the original method relocates all vertices at a time. In addition, we calculate directional derivatives for optimization on tangent subspaces, while the original algorithm reprojects vertices to the boundary after relocation. We show resulting boundaries. Using full boundary preservation, we achieve better preservation of the barrel. We also plot the norm of the trace in order to evaluate convergence. Our method exhibits superior convergence. The reprojection step does not respect convergence, which can lead to jumps in the plot. Our method also achieves good approximate preservation of the ghost mesh. The original method does not do much and terminates prematurely, as we can see in the figures. Our approximate method also exhibits good convergence, which is notable as we have achieved approximation of the input boundary without adding a geometric error term. Another important property is robustness. We evaluate robustness on all the meshes generated by Hu et al. Our method does not produce an inversion on any of these meshes. Our approximate boundary preserving approach relocates vertices along the input surface, so we calculate Hausdorff distances of the relocated boundary vertices to the input surfaces. Typically, only vanishingly small deviations from the input surface occur. Only in a very small number of cases, round-off errors accumulate, resulting in small but typically not perceivable deviations. As the meshes generated by Hu et al. Generally are of high quality, already we use a specialized test set with critical mesh quality. Since our boundary preserving method is best suited for meshes with few corner vertices, we classify the test set in meshes with few and with many corner vertices. We now compare resulting element qualities using our method and the original harmonic mesh optimization method. We first compare with our full boundary preserving method. We provide minimal dihedral angles, phi, and energy states, eta. Eta is just another formulation of the trace, dropping the dimensional constants. Better results are printed boldface. We achieve superior element qualities in the majority of cases. In general terms, the fewer corner vertices a mesh has, the better the results for full boundary preservation. When comparing with approximate boundary preservation, we also find better element qualities in the majority of cases. An important remark is that reprojection of boundary vertices can also deteriorate element quality, as we can see in this example, for instance. We finally compare runtimes of our method and the original harmonic mesh optimization method. For the boundary preserving method, we find speedups of 9 to 119 times. This is notable. When our method optimizes every boundary vertex along the input surface, it introduces additional branching, but still we achieve notable speedups of 3.5 to 78 times. The main reasons for the speedups are that we do not need a spatial data structure for boundary vertex reprojection. We have a parallel method which performs parallel calculations on the GPU, and we have individual gradient descent steps which most of the time exhibit better convergence. In summary, we have introduced a mesh optimization method which can robustly process millions of elements within a few seconds. We have shown how to parallelize harmonic flips, achieving equivalent results. Our approximate boundary method converges and does not require a geometric error term. In the future, it could be interesting to extend our vertex relocation to CAD bodies or use our fast flipping algorithm for Delaunay meshing. Convergence may be further improved by using conjugate gradients or a momentum scheme. Thanks a lot for the attention.